It's Debbie Potts, and I'm back with a new episode with a new guest, Nathan Bryan, and we are talking about nitric oxide. Why? Let's find out.
Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hello, my favorite low-carb aging athletes. I just wanted to share with you a special coupon code that I have from one of my favorite supplements, Biooptimizers. Biooptimizers has some great products that I often recommend to my health coaching clients based on their nutritional therapy analysis and their functional labs and food log symptoms that we look at. And a few of those are from Biooptimizers called HCl Breakthrough, Gluten Guardian, Magnesium Breakthrough, Capex, and their Masszymes enzymes, which is the strongest enzyme formula ever. And it has 5 different kinds of protease. Often we don't digest our food properly. So we are what we eat, but we also are what we can properly break down and absorb. So learn more from Biooptimizers. Check out their website and use our code Low Carb Athlete next time you go to purchase something. Enjoy. Dr. Nathan Bryan. He is an international expert in nitric biochemistry and molecular medicine. He has more than 20 years in academic research, and he has a background in undergraduate, Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry in his doctoral degree. He has been involved in nitric oxide research and has made many discoveries in the field. And one of his companies that we are going to talk a little bit about the science behind on nitric oxide. So you can learn more about nitric oxide science if you want to head to their website, n101.com, and read about the proven science and clinical results of nitric oxide supplementation or how you can improve it naturally. Nitric oxide science. I was really curious and was reading some other articles and found Dr. Nathan Bryan and reached out, wanted to do a podcast because I think this is an important topic for you that is similar to me, aging and wanting to live simply ageless, to be youthful, and to slow down or reverse the aging process. And as I am suddenly 52, I just turned 50 now, 2 years have already gone by, and I am just on a mission to improve my skin health, my wrinkles, my athletic performance, my recovery and repair. So I was curious about the why, the role of nitric oxide in our body, and then why does it get lower as we age, and how can we improve it? So things change as we age. So instead of blaming it, I always say, embrace it and do something about it. So what can we do without buying supplements and do things naturally as how we start the day and end the day, and our exercise and what we eat, how we digest our food to get the nutrients in. Proper gut health is always important. But the role of nitric oxide, we don't always think about, and we don't discuss it because it's something you may have never heard about. So nitric oxide science is involved in rejuvenating circulation. They fix the reason your body cannot produce nitric oxide. They recouple the nitric oxide synthase enzyme so it is able to produce nitric oxide in the lining of the blood vessels. Natural restoration. They can help restore the proper oral bacteria so your body is able to utilize nitrate from your diet to produce nitric oxide. Pioneering cardiovascular solutions. Products can enhance blood flow and heart health, setting new standards in optimized heart health and circulation. Innovation in immune and metabolic support. They can create solutions to boost immunity and metabolism. by focusing on improving our nitric oxide production. We can bypass perhaps genetic and health disorders with cutting-edge science to ensure results, even with the challenges exist with genetics, demonstrating leadership in delivering tailor-made solutions. So the science behind nitric oxide is what we'll talk about, and also the breakthrough on anti-aging skincare, as I'm just constantly on a mission to improve my face, my under eyes, especially swimming. Swim goggles do not help as your females, our hormones get lower, our estrogen, and our thin skin under eyes when we have goggles is driving me nuts. So if you guys have any solutions for getting rid of the bags and the sags, the under eyes, and the goggles just sink into your face and you have perma marks all day long, that's what I'm trying to fix. So I would love to hear what you have been experiencing as you age and what strategies you are doing, experimenting with to improve your aging process. Let me know if you have any questions, but let's dive into a different topic, nitric oxide. Here we go. All right. Okay, I've got Dr. Nathan on the show to talk about a different subject we have not dove into on this podcast. Another way to help you improve the aging process as the athlete, the endurance athlete, just aging in general. So, Dr. Nathan, thanks for coming on the show to talk about a different topic, nitric oxide. So people probably wonder,
what
the heck?
Thanks for having me on. It's great to be with you. And a very important topic.
So why do you focus in this area? What led you down this path to go into nitric oxide?
Probably, almost 25 years ago, I was a student at LSU School of Medicine, and a Nobel Prize had just been awarded for the discovery of nitric oxide. So we knew it was an extremely important molecule. But 25 years ago, we really didn't understand how the human body made nitric oxide. We didn't have a clear understanding of what went wrong in people that couldn't make it and what the consequences were. And the biggest challenge was there was no way to safely and effectively deliver nitric oxide gas to humans. Because nitric oxide is one of these molecules, and when it's produced in the human body, it's a gas, and once it's produced, it's gone in less than a second. Wow. So the challenge was, how do we deliver a bioactive gas safely and effectively to the masses? And that's what I worked on for the past 25 years.
Does it feel like 25 years?
Some days it feels like an eternity. But it's, as any career, it's a journey, right? We learn things along the way that make us pivot and think differently than we did before. But it's really, that's one of the beauties of basic science, why I fell in love with it, because there's no feeling like the feelings of discoveries. And, for a short time, we're the only people in the world who know a certain thing. And, I've had a number of those epiphanies and discoveries throughout my career. But, it's been challenging. It's been gratifying. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't change anything.
I always think, because when I say how long I have been in the industry or whatnot, I'm like, what, 30 years? How's that? How am I that old? I think I'm so much younger than I am. And then you realize how long we've been in our field. But yeah, the word I keep hearing us in my community saying pivot. And we learn from our experiences. Research continues to change, and we keep evolving. And it is a journey as a individual, as an athlete, as a coach, as a scientist. And I think that's a big thing with protein and fasting right now, and low carb, no carb. And I just always laugh, like cold therapy and sauna and all this stuff in our world. It's like boom, 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 back and forth, ping pong, and just to keep up with it. But nitric oxide is something we've always had. So talk about the role of nitric oxide, what it is, why should we be concerned about it?
Yep. Well, as I mentioned, it's a gas, it's produced, but it's a signaling molecule. Mm-hmm. It regulates things like blood flow and oxygen delivery, so delivering of nutrients and oxygen to every organ, tissue, and cell in the body. It's a neurotransmitter in the central nervous system, so it's how we develop memory and long-term potentiation and recall. It's how our immune system fights off pathogens, from viruses to bacteria. So it's extremely important. It regulates things like mitochondrial ATP production, which is extremely important and basically predictive of how well you can perform, both athletically and cognitively, or even sexually. So it affects the mobilization of stem cells. So it's dependent upon our ability to recover and repair from injury or from, just prolonged exercise is dependent upon the ability of our stem cells to mobilize and differentiate and repair and replace tissue. And it's also responsible for preventing the telomeres, the end of our chromosomes, from shortening. So, an extremely important role in longevity, because it's known that if you can prevent the telomere shortening, you can prevent, or extend longevity and lifespan. So everything we know about human performance, longevity, anti-aging really revolves around the production of nitric oxide. And when we lose the ability to produce nitric oxide, we basically age faster. We can't perform as well as we did when we were younger, either athletically, cognitively, or sexually. And so every aspect of our performance declines with the decline in nitric oxide production.
Yeah, and I'm all about improving the aging process or slowing it down, reversing it if you want. But it is, doing what we need to do to improve our ability to age gracefully and keep up our performance. And as I say this every episode, people probably sick of me saying this, but I watch my mom age and her friends, and my dad passed away last year. And, really watching your family and friends get older and see what happens. And so much of it is controllable. And that makes me really shift my focus on this podcast and pivot to focus on what can we do? What can we control? And what should we do now at age 50 to improve our future self when we are 80, 90? And I think so much of it is simple things that we can do today to improve. So nitric oxide, how do we produce it? Normally we produce it. It's found. How do we measure it? How do we know if we're low? Why do we need to pay attention? Well, you just said why, but how do we produce it? I guess start with that.
Well, it's been a challenge to kind of detect and quantify nitric oxide in patients. So, for instance, it's not like cholesterol or vitamin D or triglycerides where you can just draw blood, send it off to the lab, and get a number back. Nitric oxide is much different than that because, as I mentioned, it's a gas, it's produced, it's gone in less than a second. So we can't measure it in peripheral blood. So we really have to rely on symptoms. So what are the symptoms of nitric oxide deficiency? Number one, usually the first sign and symptom is erectile dysfunction. And that occurs in both men and women. So if you can't dilate blood vessels because you've lost the ability to produce nitric oxide, you can't get engorgement, you develop erectile dysfunction. And that's in both men and women. And next, if you have an unsafe elevation in blood pressure, any blood pressure, now the guidelines have changed, but, any blood pressure greater than 120/80, that's a sign and symptom of loss of nitric oxide production. And 2 out of 3 Americans, prior to the changing guidelines, 2 out of 3 Americans had an unsafe elevation in blood pressure, which was at that time 130/80 or 89. So it's a huge problem. And then if we develop, insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, that's a sign and symptom of nitric oxide deficiency. If you get winded walking up a flight of steps, and if you can't exercise, 20, 30 minutes a day without completely fatiguing and maintaining some exercise regimen, then that's a sign and symptom of nitric oxide deficiency. So really, clinically, we have to look at the whole picture. But most of the symptoms that Americans and really people around the world are faced with today can be traced back to a loss of nitric oxide production. So it's foundational for how the body performs and regulates many different biological functions and physiological functions.
What about varicose veins? Is that a sign when you have?
Usually varicose veins means there's some type of vascular insufficiency. So the body's really resilient in the fact that there's, if there's a road blockage or some type of obstruction or stenosis on the venous side of things, then you develop new blood vessels around it, right? So it's always trying to, and it's a process called angiogenesis or arteriogenesis that allows for the body to make new blood vessels to maybe go around an area where there's not sufficient blood supply. So I'm not saying nitric oxide will affect varicose veins. I mean, we have some clinical evidence that it will, but you have to look at the reason they're varicose veins to begin with, right? There's something happened with the circulatory system that's affecting the integrity of that, and the body's responding by creating more veins and more blood vessels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just thought of that as well. So going into the symptoms, and then you're talking about some areas that are impacted as neurotransmitter production, immune system, mitochondria, performance. Let's kind of go into that a little deeper on the performance side of it as mitochondria, because I think that's always a big topic for athletes as well as recovery and repair. If we can just dive into that one a little deeper.
Sure. So the mitochondria, as your audience probably is well, are the energy producing organelles of the cell. So really well-trained athletes, people who are peak performance, have higher numbers of mitochondria per cell, and the mitochondria are really efficient at generating cellular energy, or ATP, with very little oxygen. And so how do we do this? Number one, we have to improve the efficiency of mitochondrial energy production. Nitric oxide has been shown to recouple the electron transport chain, lead to more efficient ATP production with less oxygen. So you can extend the oxygen gradient into tissue to where now these mitochondria can extend the anaerobic threshold. And so you get less lactic acid buildup, and athletes can actually go longer, stronger, faster because they have improved mitochondrial function. And then secondly, and I think perhaps the adaptive effects of this, are mitochondrial biogenesis. So, things like caloric restriction, intermittent fasting, sirtuins, all of that have been shown to improve mitochondrial biogenesis. But all of those pathways are dependent upon the cell's ability to produce nitric oxide. Mm. So if your cell can't produce nitric oxide because of some dysfunction or enzyme uncoupling, then intermittent fasting, sirtuins, caloric restriction, none of that's going to lead to mitochondrial biogenesis, because it's those pathways that stimulate nitric oxide that activate PGC1 alpha, which leads to mitochondrial biogenesis. So now, if your body can make nitric oxide, you have more mitochondria per cell that are generating more energy with less oxygen more efficiently. What that translates into a well-oiled machine and a well-trained athlete that's going to outcompete the competition. And that's why athletes are so in tune to know the importance of nitric oxide, because it's really the difference between first and last.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then what about recovery and repair? How do we see that? The post-workout.
Recovery and repair. So the aging process, not just in athletes, but in general, we're constantly wearing ourselves out, right? That's what aging is. And so advanced aging is when we lose the ability to repair and replace those dysfunctional tissues. And the job of that is our own stem cells, right? We got stem cells in our bone marrow. We've got stem cells in our fat. So years ago, it was thought that the older we get, the less stem cells we have. Well, now we know that's not true, because we have a number of stem cells in our fat, and most people accumulate more fat the older they get. So the problem has always been not the number of stem cells in our body, but the signal that tells our own stem cells to mobilize and differentiate. And that's nitric oxide. And this was, in 2006, it was revealed that nitric oxide is the signal that tells our own stem cells to mobilize and differentiate. So the older you get, the less nitric oxide you make, the less signal the stem cells get to go and repair and replace tissue. So you just advance your age, you don't recover as well. But if you can restore nitric oxide production, you can mobilize your own stem cells to go and repair and replace dysfunctional or injured tissue. And we basically delay or prolong the whole aging process. So we can age better, not as fast. And for me, it's not about the quantity of the age, right? It's the quality of our life. So I want to live a long time, but only if I'm healthy and able to enjoy life. Nobody wants to live at 120 years old, bedridden, and you have 3 or 4 family members take care of you and change your diapers. That's not quality of life.
I'm laughing because I just wrote that in my LinkedIn post yesterday. It's like, it's improving the aging process, but a long, healthy, happy, quality lifespan.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it's all about. Our most important asset is our health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we are younger, we are producing nitric oxide, where in the body where does it come from?
Today we understand there's 2 primary pathways to make nitric oxide. There's an enzyme that's found in the lining of the blood vessels, and that enzyme converts an amino acid called arginine, L-arginine, into nitric oxide. And it's a very complicated biochemical reaction. And that's what's responsible for the second-to-second regulation of blood flow and vasodilation and oxygen delivery. And it's that enzyme that becomes dysfunctional with age. So population-based studies show that the older we get, the less functional that enzyme becomes. But now we realize that doesn't have to be the case, because if you look at kind of population-based on average, and by the way, as you know, the average American isn't very healthy, right? So it shouldn't be a guideline for what's normal. But we lose about 10 to 12% of our nitric oxide production per decade. So our whole thought process 20 years ago was, how do we prevent this loss of enzymatic function and this loss or this age-related decline in nitric oxide production? If we can prevent that, can we prevent age-related disease? And the answer is yes. I'll be 50 in 2 weeks, but yet have the biological age and the vascular age of a 36-year-old. And to the contrary, we see in 20, 24-year-old young kids that have the vascular age of a 50 or 60-year-old. So there's many things we can do, and most of it's diet and lifestyle, which isn't that surprising, that can affect either the rapid progression of loss of nitric oxide production or the inhibition of the prolongation of nitric oxide production into our later years. So we understand the enzymology and biochemistry of that enzyme. And then the other pathway is through the diet. And it's mainly the mechanism of green leafy vegetables, plant-based diets, Mediterranean diet, the Japanese diet. Because there's a molecule found in green leafy vegetables called nitrate, inorganic nitrate, that the body can metabolize into nitric oxide. But that pathway is dependent upon, number one, getting enough nitrate in the diet. Number two, the presence of the right oral microbiome and these nitrate-producing bacteria. And then number three is sufficient stomach acid production. And now this is where Americans get it totally wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've quantified this. The standard American diet, you're not getting enough nitrate from your diet. Number two, the oral microbiome is extremely important. 2 out of 3 Americans wake up every morning and use mouthwash, completely destroying the oral microbiome.
That many people do? Wow.
2 out of 3 Americans, 200 million people are using mouthwash every day. And the consequences are devastating.
Yeah.
We published maybe 15 years ago, if you use mouthwash, your blood pressure goes up. And it's killing the oral microbiome, shutting down nitric oxide production. Your blood pressure goes up, you develop sexual dysfunction, you lose the protective benefits of exercise.
Wow.
And then the third problem, which
they just want a good breath, and look what's happening.
Yeah, no,
can't have sex.
That's right. Yeah, the consequence, I tell people it's better to have bad breath than to have a heart attack. And the data are very clear now. If you destroy the microbiome, you shut down nitric oxide production, and a lot of bad things happen. And then thirdly, antacids.
Yeah.
Antacids completely shut down nitric oxide production from both pathways. And now there's clear data showing that people who have been on antacids, specifically what's called proton pump inhibitors, things like Prevacid, Prilosec, omeprazole, pantoprazole, 40% higher incidence of heart attack, stroke, and Alzheimer's from people who have been on these drugs for 3 to 5 years because they completely shut down nitric oxide production.
There's a great book on that we had to read, a nutritional therapy practitioner school I took, and it is what was it? Not your HCl, something about your HCl. Forget the topic or the title, but it was acid. The stomach acid is just unbelievable that we were another thing we were taught totally wrong in all the supplements and medications.
There's 200 million prescriptions written every year for antacids. That's not even now. You can go to the Walmart or pharmacy and buy these over the counter. And the FDA never approved these drugs to be taken chronically. They were only approved to be taken for a very short period of time, 3 to 5 days for gastroesophageal reflux disease. But yet people have been taking these for 10, 15, 20. I know people have been on for 25 or 30 years.
Yeah, you can't get off of them.
Causing heart attack, stroke, and Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. So we need stomach acid.
Yeah, just
have stomach acid.
Explain though real quick, because I'm sure those listeners go, oh my God, I've been taking it forever. Why is it such a not a great thing to be taking those? What happens to our stomach if we don't have the right acidity in our stomach?
Well, look, there's a broad range of bad things that happen. So number one, you need stomach acid to absorb nutrients like iron, chromium, magnesium, iodine. Number two, you need stomach acid to break down proteins into amino acids. Our body's never designed to see peptide fragments or undigested protein. Our body makes antibodies against it. In fact, it's the basis for foodborne allergies. In fact, most autoimmune disease can be traced back to insufficient stomach acid production.
Work your way north.
Say again?
You got to work your way north. Root cause medicine is don't go to where it's happening, go backwards.
That's right. Digestion begins in the mouth, and a lot of this with the oral microbiome. So your body cannot and will not heal without stomach acid production. You become nutrient deficient, you develop autoimmunity, you lose control of acid-base balance in the body because we need that acid dump in the duodenum for the pancreas to secrete bicarb, which leads to buffering throughout the entire body. And what we're finding now is that these proton pump inhibitors not only shut down nitric oxide production from this enterosalivary circuit, but also inhibits the enzyme that makes nitric oxide in the lining of the blood vessel. So it completely shuts down both pathways to make nitric oxide.
Yeah. remember, the body's all connected. One thing goes off, it's that whole domino effect. But yeah, I always think that's a huge topic, especially if we've been talking a lot about protein prioritization for muscle health, and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon's information on Forever Strong and Donald Layman, and that I was talking about eating all the right foods that you need for your body, but then proper digestion. And so many people, including myself, I have to take enzymes. And if I need HCl, unless you don't have H. pylori infection, you don't want to take acid supplements until we get that down. But it is important to test and not guess what's going on ahead of time. But it's just proper digestion of protein, so you get those amino acids, because you could be eating this great diet that you think is giving you all the benefits you need, but you're not breaking it down. Is a huge thing. Start with digestion.
Yep.
So, but go back to what you said, is because this is a big topic. You're saying how we get the ingredients to help make nitric oxide or support it with arginine. And you get that from leafy vegetables and from nitrates. But then there's this whole big popular world out there now going, plants are toxic and we need more animal-based, but plant have toxins and we need to avoid them. And having too much of the wrong foods too often can cause a lot of side effects from that. So what would you say about the leafy vegetables when everyone else is saying their plant toxins are in there?
Well, look, today we understand how the body makes nitric oxide. We understand what goes wrong in people that can't make it. We know how to fix it. So arginine, the body's never deficient in arginine. So there's no need to supplement arginine or take a product with arginine in it. In fact, we now know that taking excess arginine can actually cause more harm than good. So this is a semi-essential amino acid, meaning that our body, we get it from the breakdown of proteins, but our body also makes it through the urea cycle. So arginine, citrulline-based products are completely useless in terms of producing or stimulating nitric oxide production.
There's a lot of supplements with that in there. So that's it.
No, it is. And that's one of the most frustrating things for me, is because you got these companies out there selling these nitric oxide products. They're putting 30, 40, 55 ingredients in a bag and calling it a nitric oxide product, and they don't have any idea on the biochemistry, the enzymology, or what it takes to produce nitric oxide. But and two, there's clinical studies showing that it can actually, do more harm than good if you don't understand what's going on in these individual patients and if the enzyme is actually coupled. So in terms of the green leafy vegetables, what we focus on, there are a lot of nutrients in plants, but in fact, since the 1940s, there's a 76% decrease in the nutrients found in plants and vegetables grown in the U.S. So, but we need inorganic nitrate, and that's found primarily in green leafy vegetables, that the body can convert through the oral bacterium to nitrite, and we swallow our saliva, we get nitric oxide gas in the acid environment of the stomach. So again, you have to it's risk benefit, right? So you have to eat plants that obviously don't have herbicides or pesticides on it, because they're plants, they're poisons, or if there's other toxins in the plants. But fundamentally, there's this physiological process where we utilize the nutrients, primarily the nitrate from the plants, or the vegetables, as a substrate to make nitric oxide. But the problem is there's such a high variability in the nitrate content of these vegetables that it's difficult, if not impossible, to know if you're getting enough nitrate from the foods you're eating. And that's why we think it's important. And as you alluded to earlier, we almost have to supplement, because the foods we eat in America today are deficient in so many nutrients. And so we have to do micronutrient analysis, figure out what our body's missing, and give it back. Because the body only performs if it has the raw material to do the jobs. And if we're deficient in certain nutrients, we develop chronic disease. We're exposed to toxins, we develop chronic disease. So if we eliminate toxins, replete the missing nutrients, the body heals itself.
Yeah, finding that innate intelligence, get a little jump start so everything functions the way it used to. So explain a little bit more, what are nitrates? Because sometimes that seems as a negative word as well, like you want nitrate free. So what are nitrates?
Well, nitrates are naturally formed. They're naturally occurring molecules. They're found naturally in green leafy vegetables. It's how vegetables actually grow and assimilate other nutrients. They extract nitrogen from the soil, assimilate it as nitrate. And it's this whole field of agronomy and nitrogen assimilation that allows for the assimilation of other nutrients. But it got a bad rap in the 60s and 70s because people thought that nitrite added to bacon and hot dogs and cured meat caused cancer. But now we know that that's completely not true. And in fact, 85% of the nitrate exposure we get from our diet comes from green leafy vegetables. Only 5% comes from eating cured and processed meats. The other 10% comes from swallowing our own saliva. So epidemiologically, if nitrate were bad and caused cancer, then vegetarians or people who ate primarily a plant-based diet would have 10 times higher rates of cancer than meat eaters. And in fact, we know it's just the opposite. It's anti-cancer, it's protective in the cardiovascular system and protective against cancer. And that's because its ability to produce nitric oxide affects cell cycle, allow for tissue oxygenation, which cancer cannot grow in highly oxygenated areas where there's coupled mitochondria. Cancer only grows in low oxygen, low pH, low blood flow environments.
Yeah. And the neurotransmitter issue and the immune benefits from nitric oxide, I wanted to revisit that because I think as we're fall, winter season, people are, I think athletes too, we get our immune system gets depressed because we're exercising too much, and the immune system we should always be boosting in the wintertime. Neurotransmitter production, I think, is an important part. So anything on that with nitric oxide, I think that's a good topic as well.
Yeah, so the enzyme, there's an enzyme called neuronal nitric oxide synthase, and it's very similar to the one found in the lining of the blood vessels, just found primarily in neurons versus endothelial cells. And the biochemistry is exactly the same as found in the lining of the blood vessels. So if you've got endothelial dysfunction and the NOS enzyme is uncoupled in the endothelial cells, then the same environment occurs in the neurons. So you don't get production of nitric oxide, and then it affects neurotransmitter and this whole synaptic neurotransmission in neurons. And that leads to, ADHD, neurocognitive disorders. And so if you don't have sufficient blood flow to the brain and you don't have optimal neurotransmitter production, then you develop neurological disease. So we have to be able to recouple that NOS enzyme, which we know how to do, and allow for neurotransmission and regulation of blood flow to the brain. So that's very simple and straightforward. The immune function, we learned a lot during COVID, because people who were getting sick and dying from COVID were the people who couldn't make nitric oxide. And this really wasn't new to us, because it's the same thing that's occurred for the past 100 years with seasonal flu. There's certain people who get flu, 20 to 40,000 people die every year from the flu. Who are those people that get sick and die from the flu and COVID? Was the elderly, people with prior heart attack, high blood pressure, diabetes, smokers. Those are people who cannot make nitric oxide. So in a normal, healthy person, this is how it's designed to work. So let's use the virus, because winter season is typically the viral season. We're exposed to viruses every day. Some people get sick, some people don't. Viruses typically are taken up in the oral mucosa or the nasal epithelium, the airway. So when the virus binds and attaches to the cells, that signals our immune system, hey, I've got an invading pathogen. I need to go to the site of attachment and isolate this virus or bacteria. And you do that through mobilizing an immune response. So you've got to be able to dilate the blood vessels, get blood flow in the immune cells to the site of attachment. And then the immune cells actually go in and create a lot of nitric oxide gas. And that nitric oxide that's produced by our immune system, if it's a bacteria, it binds to the iron sulfur centers of the bacteria, shuts down their respiration and kills it. That's what nitric oxide does. If it's a virus, it prevents the replication of the virus. So the virus, people only get sick if the virus is able to attach to the cell, penetrate, rapidly replicate, and propagate throughout the body. And then you get sick. So if your body has good circulatory system, good nitric oxide, you basically nip it in the bud, generate nitric oxide, prevent the virus from replicating, and you never get sick. But if you can't make nitric oxide, number one, you can't mobilize an immune response to get the macrophages and neutrophils and immune cells to the site of infection. Then number two, the immune cells can't make nitric oxide to prevent the virus from replicating. The virus replicates, propagates throughout the body. People get sick, and unfortunately, many people die. But they don't have to, because if you can produce nitric oxide, then you can completely prevent the whole propagation of viral disease. And I'm probably the best example of that, because we had a drug in phase 3 clinical trials during COVID for 2 years. I was on an airplane every week since June of 2020. I was in COVID clinics all around the world, or around the U.S. I didn't wear a mask. I didn't get the shot, and yet I've never had COVID. I haven't been sick from a viral infection in more than 25 years. So it's not that I'm not exposed to it. It's just that my body knows how to deal with it, and you don't get sick from it. So the immunology and physiology is very well explained and described, and we know how to overcome infectious disease.
Interesting. So other thing on my list is genetics. You talked about genetics a little bit, but how does that play? Because I was just going into my genetic report. I've done the DNA company. They have great reports. So is there anything on here we can identify to help us figure out, oh, we need to take a little more action earlier on if I want to improve the aging process?
Yeah, so obviously there are certain genetic, what's called single nucleotide polymorphisms or SNPs in certain gene products that compromise our ability to make nitric oxide. Obviously, if you have a SNP in the eNOS, nNOS, or iNOS gene, then that's going to affect the genetic or the translation and the transcription of that enzyme from the DNA and kind of the genetic fingerprint. So that's obvious. What's not obvious is the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene, or MTHFR. And it's that enzyme that basically feeds BH4 tetrahydrobiopterin into the eNOS pathway. So if you have an MTHFR SNP, then it leads to an oxidation of BH4 to BH2, which then leads to NOS uncoupling. You develop endothelial dysfunction. So MTHFR leads to nitric oxide deficiency. And that's the one that most, and some reports show 45 to 55% of Americans have either a heterozygous or a homozygous SNP in the MTHFR gene. So it's a huge problem. So now your body becomes compromised in its ability to make nitric oxide. So you have to take a product that actually generates nitric oxide for you. So our whole concept is if your body can't make nitric oxide because of genetics or diet and lifestyle, then we have to provide a source of nitric oxide for you. And that's what we do.
So if we want to, I keep saying, recreate our current self so we can be our best future self. And so doing 50 something, we're at, I think once you're over 40, you should really start preparing for your future self and doing what we can do, as we spoke about earlier. So there's so many different supplements out there and it gets kind of overwhelming. Which ones do we take? What do we cycle in and out? So we talked about the symptoms if we are low in nitric oxide. If we find that we have genetic SNPs for that, what should we do to take action of our future self to improve nitric oxide production, as well as current self, because I want to improve performance as an athlete and I want to speed up recovery, repair, and I'm trying to get stronger, faster, more powerful as I age to, counteract the age effects that we say we get slow and fast and fat. And I'm fighting that.
Well, I think what I tell people is nitric oxide is foundational for everything. Your body cannot and will not heal without nitric oxide, but it's not a silver bullet. It's not an end-all, be-all, cure-all. So I think what we have to do, and this is what I tell people, number one, you have to get rid of any toxins that's exposed in your body, and you got to replete missing nutrients, and then the body heals itself. So that's kind of globally speaking. But in terms of nitric oxide, I tell people you have to stop doing the things that disrupt nitric oxide production and then start doing the things that promote it. So we have to stop using mouthwash. The data are very clear. You don't take an antibiotic every day for the rest of your life because of the destruction it does on the gut microbiome. So by the same token, why would you take an oral antiseptic in the mouthwash that destroys the oral microbiome every day? We need that. We need a diverse oral microbiome to produce nitric oxide.
Can you just throw in there that mouthwash is, people might not think of it, that it's antimicrobial, antibacterial. It's like since the pandemic, I think everyone's using, bacterial wipes and mouthwash, but you're clean when you're doing mouthwash, you're cleaning out, killing your good and bad bacteria right in your mouth. So that's why the good guys keep the bad guys at bay, right? But if you destroy this microbiome and this ecology, then the bad guys, it allows these opportunistic bacteria that cause bad breath, gum disease, gingivitis, periodontal disease to flourish. If you maintain a healthy, diverse microbiome, then the good guys keep the bad guys at bay. You've got good health. And so you cannot take an antiseptic mouthwash, especially when it says kills 99.99% of the bacteria in your mouth. That's not a good thing. But yet you've got companies advertising that. So that's a good billboard. We need that on a billboard. Killing all bacteria is not a positive.
No, it's horrible.
Marketing.
And then the other problem is fluoride. Most toothpaste contain fluoride. Fluoride's a neurotoxin. It kills your thyroid, and it's an antiseptic. So you have to get rid of fluoride in your toothpaste. You have to get rid of fluoride in their drinking water, the water you bathe in, cook in, drink. Those are the two biggies. And then the other is you have to get off antacids. So if you just eliminate mouthwash, eliminate fluoride, get rid of antacids, now you've stopped doing the things that disrupt nitric oxide production. Now you can start doing the things that promote it because your body can be primed to actually generate. And that's, a balanced diet in moderation, moderate physical exercise, 20 to 30 minutes a day, and then 20 to 30 minutes of sunlight a day. There's certain wavelengths of light that will stimulate and release nitric oxide. And then when all else fails, we have product technology that does it for you. But those are the simple things. And I tell people that's where you start. And then we can actually help and help propel you along that pathway through our product technology.
So let's kind of dive into that. What are your products? What do you do?
Well, we make products that actually generate nitric oxide gas. And that's what makes us different from all these other companies out there who are selling so-called nitric oxide products. So if your body can't make it, we do it for you. We make an orally disintegrating tablet that when you put it in your mouth, it dissolves over 5 to 6 minutes. And as it's dissolving, we're releasing nitric oxide gas. If your body can't make it, we do it for you. And then we actually recouple the NOS enzyme, right? So the lining in the blood vessels, the enzyme in the lining of the blood vessels, the enzyme in the neurons, we recouple that and provide normal function for that enzyme. So now we've improved the body's ability to make it enzymatically. And then because we designed this lozenge to have a 5 to 6 minute resident time in the mouth, we're restoring the oral microbiome. Most bad bacteria are sensitive to nitric oxide. So nitric oxide, as I mentioned, binds to the iron sulfur centers and shuts them down. So we're getting data that we're restoring the oral microbiome. So our products generate nitric oxide if your body can't make it, and we restore the body's ability to make it from the oral microbiome and from the lining of the blood vessels. So that's the lozenge. We also make a fermented beet powder. As you know, as an athlete, beets have been the hero vegetable for the past 10, 12 years, since the 2012 Olympic Games. But most beet products don't do anything except turn your pee and your poop pink and cause a lot of anxiety. So we make a nitric oxide active beet powder. We've taken the oxalates out of the beets. We've taken the beet pulp, the beet color, the beet taste. And we call this NO beets. And we add electrolytes to it, and we put peak ATP as an energy source in that product. So this is designed to be taken as a pre-workout or as an energy drink to replace things like Red Bull, 5 Hour Energy, and stimulant-ridden, dangerous monster energy drinks, things like that. So those are our consumer products, the lozenge, the NO beets, and then we make a line of skincare products for the skin. Because aging skin is really just like the aging heart or the aging sex organ. It's lost its ability to produce nitric oxide. So we provide a dual chamber nitric oxide delivery system that you take one pump from each side, you mix it together, apply it to the face, and it generates nitric oxide gas. We can stimulate blood flow, get a hyperemic response. We've got 5 published clinical trials. You can improve collagen deposition, improve hydration, fine lines and wrinkles go away, and the skin basically we stimulate regeneration, mobilize stem cells, and repair and replace old dysfunctional dermal cells.
What?
Amazing product.
Yeah, I didn't know about that one. That is that's on my mission area, is my skin and keeping that healthy. Because you just see people get older, and I just saw on TV watching some show, and it's a guy from Party of Five was on some show for some, I don't know, Hallmark movie or something. And like, oh my God, isn't he my age? He looks so much older, and he just is all wrinkly. Like, what? How come they have all this money in Hollywood to do stuff? And how come some people just look so much older?
Well, the skin is an outward reflection of internal health, right? If you're not
that's what we said.
healthy internally, then your skin's going to reflect that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's all about sufficient blood supply, because we have to mobilize stem cells. We have to get oxygen nutrients to every cell in the body. So most skincare products out there are designed to hide or mask the fine lines, the wrinkles, the
Band-Aids,
age spots, the blemishes. What we do is completely different. It's a new category in skincare. We get to the root cause of aging skin, and it's lack of blood flow and circulation. So now we can actually improve the tone, texture, and clarity of the skin, improve collagen deposition, hydration through the delivery of our nitric oxide topical. And so it's been an amazing product. In fact, transformative results in as little as 30 days.
Oh, I'm all over that. I'll try that. So what about, I was thinking stacking. Red light therapy, wearing a red light mask, how does that help stimulate that production more so?
Yeah, so this, we use this term stack the hack, right? Because as I mentioned, nitric oxide is foundational, but there are other things you can and should be doing. So red light therapy is really good. I'm a big fan of red light, infrared saunas, and red light therapy. But the red light works partially through not only stimulating mitochondrial production, but liberating nitric oxide. But if you're deficient in nitric oxide, there's less nitric oxide to release by red light therapy. So if you take the lozenge or the bead powder before and you titrate up these photolabile stores of nitric oxide, and then you use red light therapy, you're going to potentiate the effects of red light therapy and basically improve the clinical outcomes. Same thing with hyperbaric oxygen. If you take the nitric oxide before you get into hyperbaric, it will dilate the microcirculation and get better oxygen delivery to individual cells of the body. And so really anything you're doing in terms of biohacking or other modalities, if you start with nitric oxide, it's going to make everything else you do much more effective.
Yeah, I need to try that. I have a sunlight and sauna with near, mid, and far infrared wavelengths, and I have this higher dose red light mask, and I have this new flex beam red light near infrared thing you can put on whatever body part. And I was testing it on my microbiome, put it on your gut and help that. Yeah. But it'd be interesting to stack that. But also the other thing I was just researching, because it's everywhere here in San Diego, it's at little naturopathic type of clinics, is NAD supplementation. And
vitamin D?
NAD?
Oh, NAD. Yeah, NAD and NADPH are cofactors in the production of nitric oxide.
Yeah.
So we need to recycle these. And I think that, again, and if you're taking IV, especially IV nutrition or IV therapies, if you take the nitric oxide lozenge first, because if you're trying to deliver things intravenously, if there's a roadblock in these blood vessels because you can't make nitric oxide, you're not going to get delivery of these nutrients to the cells and tissues that need it the most. So if we start with the nitric oxide, we can dilate the blood vessels, open up the microcirculation. Now when you're delivering, whether it's, Myers cocktail or nutrients or B vitamins or NAD, you're going to get better delivery of those nutrients to individual cells in the body. So we have to open up the highway so you get better delivery. And that's what nitric oxide does.
Well, I know these different wellness institutes, they have the HBOT, they have the red light therapy, and then they have Normatec boots and what's the other thing? The PEMF mats and tables. And everybody's doing that down here. It's funny. It's like, okay, you guys are all doing the same thing, but they have the supplementation injections of NAD or IV. And so I was thinking, okay, how can you compare this together? But it makes so much sense that if you don't have good delivery system, is it really effective?
Right. Yeah, so you're not going to deliver it where it needs to be.
Yeah. So I was thinking minimal effective dose, how to optimize your health in simple ways, free ways. So what are some free things we can finish up with some things people can do now to improve, to summarize? And then if they want supplementation, we'll put that link in the show notes to look at and get a discount code low carb athlete to our listeners to learn more, as I'm going to stack my hacks or hack my stacks.
So again, it's cost savings really. So you don't have to buy mouthwash anymore. You can buy a fluoride-free toothpaste that's cost effective, and you don't have to buy antacids. So that right there is cost savings. Yeah. And the other simple things is just, start exercising. We have to move 20, 30 minutes of exercise out in the sun. I like first sunlight in the morning. And then, moderate diet or balanced diet in moderation. I'm not a big fan of extreme diet, straight carnivore, straight vegan. I think we need to get our nutrients from a balanced and diverse food source. But again, it's moderation with very little sugar. And people have to avoid sugar. Sugar is poison. It's a toxin. And by the way, you cannot get nutrients or nitric oxide in the forms of gummies. If people are taking gummies or chews, you have to stop. It destroys the microbiome. We don't need sugar. It's like planting a seed in kerosene, or putting a seed in kerosene or diesel and putting it in the ground. It's not going to yield any fruit. You can't do that in a gummy or a chew.
I know. I go to my brother-in-law has a big giant Costco-sized bottles of the gummies. Like, you are middle-aged adult. Why are you taking this crap? And you just have to let people figure it out.
It would be humorous if it wasn't causing so much havoc in people's health.
Yeah, people don't correlate. I don't think people correlate and put different things together and go, oh, that's happening because of this. And look at these patterns, actually stop and reflect. So I know we're out of time and you got to go jump on a plane. Where can people learn more? What's the website? We'll put everything in the show notes, and you're speaking at different places. Tell us a little bit where to find you.
So I send people, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to provide education and awareness. I send people to my educational website. It's Dr. Nathan S. Bryan. I do a monthly blog. We've got some videos on there that'll instruct you about nitric oxide and kind of give you some pointers. I'm on PubMed. I'm certainly searchable. I've published over 100 peer-reviewed papers. For those interested in the product technology, it's n101.com. That's the letter N, the number one, the letter O, number one.com. So one nitrogen, one oxygen, n101.com.
Okay. I'll copy and put that all into the show notes. So thanks so much for your time today. I'm glad we connected. And I think that's important information to share, is that I'm all about living my best life, my second half of my life. And
absolutely. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, just all the things that you hear about get older is so much by choice, and take control of what you can. So take ownership of your health now, not wait until you're sick, struggling, and feeling awful. So
look, it's easier to prevent disease than it is to treat it. So be proactive instead of reactive.
And your doctor's not going to help you with that.
Sadly. Well, you have to take control of your own health. The doctors don't make anybody better.
No, not at all. I don't think so. So thanks so much and good luck. And we'll keep following you and keep learning more.
Thank you, Debbie. Take care.
Hey, my fellow aging endurance athletes, just a reminder, if you like what you listened to today, make sure to share this episode with your community. Head to debbiepotts.net to set up a free discovery call to learn more about my personalized coaching programs, especially if you are on a mission as myself to improve the aging process and start training to be my best self when I am 80, 90 years old. So I am on a mission to live my best life and be my best self the second half of my life. So if you're on the same mission as me, head over to my website and YouTube channel to learn more ways to improve the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Hey guys, we've got a nice offer from our guest today on their website, N101 Nitric Oxide. If you want to try out some of the products, you can go to their website and click on Shop Supplements or Skincare and try out some of their products. And you can use our code LowCarbAthlete to experiment, see if these work. I've been using the throat lozenges, or not throat lozenges, but they're nitric oxide lozenges and their skincare line, and trying this system to improve blood flow to my skin and pre-workouts, and then stacking it with my red light face mask and also my sauna. And I think it's good. N equals one experiment, but if you want to try adding some supplementation or some skincare products, check it out. It's interesting. So check out N101. You can find out more in the show notes. Enjoy. Talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.